In today's video, we're going to be talking about fighter mindset, practice mindset, and I guess my own personal mindset when it comes to armored combat. So I had someone ask me recently to make a video about kind of the fighter mindset for this sport. And it got me thinking a little about the different types of mindsets I bring into different types of events, into practice, into trainings, into friendly competitions, tournament competitions, and kind of what the differences are. So I want to start by saying this is how I approach the sport. Everyone is very different, and I know like directly by talking to other friends of mine that they have a different approach to some of the stuff. But I think some is universal. So let's start with the universal stuff first. I think the first thing is to talk about the difference between fighting and practice. And this may be common sense to many of you. I don't know. But we have to go into the mindset of practice with the idea that we're not trying to win a practice. Now, I'm not talking about when you go to maybe a class and you're working the technique for a throw, or when you're working your striking at the PEL or anything like that. I'm talking about the practices where you may go and fight with a team, and it may be a practice event. You may be in soft kit, so foam sparring gear. You may even be in full armor and practicing certain things. And the mindset of trying to win that and win that practice is going to make you a worse fighter. And here's what I mean by that. There's been a lot of times we've gone and we did melee practice recently. So we had 3-on-3 soft kit melee, right? So you'd go, you'd fight for, a melee round. There were some fighters in that group of that day who were equal to me, maybe better, and there were some who definitely weren't as good. And when I got the fighter that wasn't as good as me, I could have more easily won that fight, tossed on the ground, moved on to the next person. I could have fought to win. Or I could have approached it as, I've been working this throw in practice, on dummies or in one-on-one or slow for months. I'm going to try to maneuver this throw. I'm going to keep pushing this throw. And I may lose that fight, but gain some knowledge on how to then make that throw better. Or maybe I land that throw. And there's been times where I've gone into like a sparring practice and I'm just trying to land one shot, right? One new shot that I've been working on, one new technique, maybe even half a technique. I'm trying to get my hips turned in a certain way to begin a throw I'm working on. So for me, that's the mindset of trying to, if not winning practice, but learning in practice. So if you go into any kind of group sparring event, night fight, pro fight sparring, any practice event with the mindset I've got to get the most points, I've got to the most wins, you're giving yourself a disadvantage versus other people going and saying, I'm going to practice in real time the things that I've been training on my own or in one-on-ones or whatever it may be. So I think that's a big thing to kind of keep in mind when we talk about the mindset of practice. So with that, we then move into actual fights. So an actual fight and kind of the differences there. And for me, I break it up into a couple different areas. This is developed over time. This is developed as I've done more and more fights. I think at the beginning there was no difference between like a high level fight and a low level fight. They were just my first fights. I didn't know, right? So with the same aggressive mindset. Now there is for me a slight difference between a friendly fight and a tournament fight. And it's not a difference in trying to win. I want to win every match I go into. I want to fight as hard as I can in every match. But there is a slight difference in approach. And what I mean by that is I may not throw the hardest shot in a friendly fight that I might in a tournament against someone who's on my team, not on my team in the fight, but on my bigger team, on the Executioners, and we're in a match where we're fighting each other, in a chapter match or something like that. I may not go in with my heaviest axe, and I might go with something lighter for that fight, right? I might tone it down slightly so that there's less risk of injury in a fight that doesn't matter in a tournament sense. And I'm not going to be winning a qualifier or going to a national event or winning this chapter season or something like that. So I think that's a slight difference. So we do a lot of fun fights at the hall. We do paranoia matches. It's all the alls, right? It just gets your skills up, gets your practice in. The fans love it. I still want to win them, but I'll change my approach a little bit. I'll be a little more aware of gaps. Really try not to land gap shots. in those fights, but I'll still throw hard shots. I'll just throw harder shots to armor, right? So I think that's kind of the mindset difference for me, and that's developed over time as I've gotten more comfortable with my own skills and my own abilities and kind of able to read it. That doesn't mean that you can't go as hard, and that might mean that the friendly fight, that might be your highest level fight at the time. If you're a newer fighter or you don't travel as much or whatever the reason, you may make that fight, that might be your big fight, and you should go as hard as you want with it. I'll never get mad at somebody for fighting me hard or hitting me hard or doing whatever they need to in an actual match. I just know personally for me, I try to dial it a little bit to what the level of that needs to be and work on, again, still work on different things. Even those friendly fights, there'll be opportunities where we might get a 2-on-1. You know, I'm up 2-on-1, so I have an advantage, and I might, where I could get the throw easily, I might stop and try something different that I've been working on. You know, and that's all about situational awareness and kind of your own skill level and all that. And that's developed. I don't think I had that until a year plus of matches and doing a fair number of fights and kind of feeling that difference and having traveled to some of the national events and having fought some of the other great teams in the country and kind of knowing there's a difference in approach for that and kind of what the mindset is. So I think that's kind of, I call it the friendly fight mentality. And then there's the tournament fight or the big fight or whatever you want to call it. Or, whatever fight matters to me. Maybe it's a fight that just matters to me a lot. Maybe I really want to win this fight for whatever personal reason. Maybe I lost to that team last time. And for me, that's where I go. And my goal is to make sure that personally, I care about two things. One, that I don't let my team down. That's very important to me as a personality of who I am. So I want to make sure that I'm not reckless. I'm not making mistakes. I want to be a solid performer, number one. That's like my baseline. I need to do that. Once I do that, then it's about how aggressive and how essentially violent I can be with my throws and my strikes and all that. I talk to some people and they, we hear a lot of times that you gotta fight calm and fight collected. I don't. I fight angry. I'm not angry at anyone. I'm not, mean to people, but I'm angry. I fight angry. I get pumped up. I get my mindset there. People will hit me hard and I'll yell at them, right? I'm not mad at them, but I'll yell and I'll get mad. I'll get mad in the moment. And that makes me personally a better fighter. That's my mindset. Other people, much more about that kind of cool warrior, ninja mentality, never get phased. And I go, that doesn't work for me. Now, some people fight happy, right? I know great fighters who fight joyfully, right? And for that makes them a better fighter. So think about the thing I think you can be aware of is what works for you, what fires you up in the right way, right? If you find that when you fight mad, you fight out of control and you go, you make dumb mistakes, well, don't do that, right? Fight calm. If you find that, when I fight calm, I tend to be not as effective. I tend to let things happen. I tend to watch the field more. So for me, if I don't get pumped up and get a little upset, I don't fight as well. That's just my personality. That's been throughout all sports, not just this. I fight better when I'm engaged and I feel a little bit of anger. And that just works for me. Now people think, people talk to me, oh, you're a happy guy. I'm a very happy guy. I love people. I love the other team I'm fighting against, and I'll be their best friends afterward. But in that moment, I want to kill that person. They want to kill me. They are hitting me with axes. I want to get them to the ground and hit them as hard as possible and make them remember that I'm the one who hit them. That's kind of what fires me up about the sport. And then we can be best friends after, and that's totally fine. So I think that's the kind of development. And I'll tell you, honestly, when I first started, I couldn't differentiate between friendly fight and tournament fight, and that's fine because those were all the same to me. Every fight was my first fight, right? Every type of fight was my first fight. My first chapter match was my first chapter match. My first duel was my first duel. So I went as hard as I could every time. And then I learned a little bit about kind of working as I got better, and as I was more of a quote unquote threat, and I knew it was no threat, so it didn't matter how hard I went. I was more of a threat. I realized that, hey, those local fights, I can tone it down a little sometimes. Practice some things. I can work on teamwork. I can do all that stuff while still being a competent, aggressive fighter. And then I got to the tournaments. I had to level up to the next level of fighters. You're not fighting just the best people in our area. We're fighting the best people across the whole country. So you have more competition, and you have to level up your mentality for that. So I think that for me is the mentality of fighting. I've talked mostly in this video about the mentality going outward. So what I mean by that is, how do I approach the fight from me fighting someone else? I think another part of this that people need to be aware of, especially in this sport, is the mentality of being willing to be hit. right? And not being afraid. And I think that comes to people in different ways. I think that can come in just in a mindset of not caring, right? Like you just go, I'm not, or maybe belief, I'm not going to get hurt. I can't, I'm too good, I'm not going to get hurt, right? Okay, that works for you maybe. For me, it's more of like a statistical thing. Like I will probably get hurt and I'm okay with that at some point. I mean, probably every fight, but I will probably get injured at some point. The sport will get in, and I've made that choice. And once I've made that choice, that kind of locks in my mind. I've made that commitment. It doesn't bother me. Doesn't mean when someone, a giant across from me, stands up and swings a giant axe at me that I don't go, ah, inside. I certainly do. But I don't go into that fight full of fear. I've already kind of put that fear aside and said, yep, I've acknowledged that fear. It exists. I'm going to put it over here and I'm going to go fight. And I'm going to put my mentality towards what I can do to them and not what I'm afraid they're going to do to me. Because what will happen once the fight starts. I'm in that list. I'm not leaving. So that for me is kind of my mentality. And again, I'm very team based. It means a lot to me to not let people down. That's really, really important. So I think that helps me kind of put that feeling aside. I think the final thing with mentality is about the willingness to hurt people in this sport. Not the goal to hurt people, but the willingness to. Is that if you go into that afraid to throw hard shots, you will be a detriment to your team. You'll be a detriment to yourself, right? And you have to recognize there's a risk of injuring someone. Now, our armor protects us, and if we have good gear, but we're generally safe. We come out with bruises, but there will be times that something fails, something bad happens, maybe just unlucky, right? And someone will get hurt, and you may be the person who hurts them, and you have to be willing to do that. I knew that coming in. Like, I want to hit hard. I want that person to remember me, and I want to leave that bruise, and I want to go, yeah, Chuck did that. That's, I want to make the throw and go, oh yeah, Chuck made that throw, and he got me down. Recognizing that someone could get injured, and I have to have that mentality and be okay with that, or this is not the sport for me. Kind of like if you're like a race car driver, right? You're going to drive a race car. You know at some point you could crash. It's not your goal. And at some point you could make someone else crash. You could bump them. You could make, and they may crash, and they could really get hurt. And that you have to be okay with the risks to go into the sport with kind of a clear mind, a clear conscience, and be willing to go in and fight to your best. And for me, the thing that I want is I want to give my opponent my best. I want them to give me their best. And again, I'm talking about, again, at those higher level fights, maybe a local thing. When I was, again, I'll say when I was new, I didn't want the best fighters in New England to give me their very best. like they could get me down easily, so why wouldn't they, right? They wouldn't have to sit there and bash on me with an axe for 5 minutes. They could throw me and I go, so that's okay. It's okay to tailor a little bit to people's skill levels, but when it comes to someone who I'm competing against to see how good I am, I want them to give me their best. I want to give their best. I want to know where I stand, and sometimes I win, sometimes I fail. And I think that's what drives me in the sport, is to kind of give it my all, knowing that I'm not always going to win. I'm not always going to have my best day. And sometimes I'm going to be, overpowered and be stronger than people than me, be faster than people than me, younger than people than me. Like, all that exists. So I think that's really where the mentality comes from. So when you're looking to get into the sport, or if you're trying to kind of reinvigorate yourself with that, spend some time. Think about kind of how you approach things, what your plan's going to be, how you want to set yourself up for success in that match, in that practice, in that event, whatever it may be. I kind of, as a joke, wore the Cobra Kai shirt here, because that's, if you watch the Cobra Kai show or you've seen an original Karate Kid or whatever, right? Like, especially the original Karate Kid's probably the best. Like, you have the two different schools. You have Miyagi school, right, of pacifism and reacting and being peaceful and then winning when needed. And you have the strike hard, strike fast, the violence of Cobra Kai. But they both had their own mentalities very clear. You knew what they were. And I think that's kind of the message I want to leave you with, is know who you are as a fighter and build your mentality around that. If you're going to fight from that place of peace and calm, then build that, practice it, train it. If you're going to fight from that area of aggression and rage and violence and, yay, that's me, do that, right? Tailor it to yourself and get good at it. So that's my mentality conversation. If you have questions, thoughts, if things don't make sense, leave a comment. Let me know. I'm glad to expound more or maybe talk a little less. Like, subscribe, follow. You can check the link below. There is a link to my store where you can get cool things like my woodchuck hat here. And you can get t-shirts and other stuff. And there's also some team merch up there for the Nightmares, which is my local team I fight for. All right, thanks for watching. Hope you all have a great day.